Hey, Steven. Okay, so I'm just recording this for you, but kind of, sort of, totally in hopes that I'll send it to you and then you can approve it for posting to the Facebook group and/or YouTube channel. So what we've done so far is I made a video talking about hip escapes and sent you to the one leg drills. And initial seemed good. The Beto drill, not something I recommend, so use at your own risk. I understand there's a time and a place for it, but it's the frame of reference is pushing the disc out. So you're starting with the disc at the center with no momentum. And the whole point of throwing is that you get to that point with momentum. So what you do out of the Beto drill is totally different than what you do out of a swing. So I don't see a lot of value there. Sure, there is some spot where it applies, but that's not something that I find useful often. So I wouldn't suggest that drill, honestly. Okay, so then we get to your update. You say you've been doing the one leg for a couple of weeks now, but today it dawned on you that you think you're doing it wrong. Very common. Almost no one gets this right off the bat. So you have to spend some time with it, doing things wrong, and then come to the realization that you're doing things wrong, which you've done. That's great. So you say you've lost about 100 feet on all your throws. So let me challenge that idea as a whole. The point of the one leg drill is not to worry about distance. The second you start worrying about distance, your brain will try to throw harder, which will defeat the purpose of the drill. So as much as you can, try to set distance and accuracy aside and focus on the process of changing mechanics. Until you can do that, I can almost guarantee you're not going to make any progress, because you have to let go of results-oriented throwing and focus on process orientation to make the changes we're trying to make. Okay, so you say looking at the videos, it looks like a hip escape has only gotten worse. It looks about the same. I don't think it can get worse, really. Okay, so videos. So let's take a look at these. So this is the one leg. I think I've got you slowed down a little bit. So a couple, like I tell people, don't move your knee when you do the one leg drill. And I've showed this to hundreds of people. I've literally had one person get it right their first try. And he was probably a mechanical engineer. So he thinks like me, like with robot brain. So that's your knee moving. Like your knee moves back a whole lot, which means that it's not gonna work. Because once you wind the knee up, so here, your knee is pointing straight forward on the line that your toe is pointed towards. Also of note, probably turn your toe a little bit back. You don't want to be flat 90. You want to have your toe back a little bit. That'll help establish your hip point. But here, look at, that's your knee moving to where now it's pointing back here. So your toes line is that way and your knee is pointing back here. So your knee was pointing here and it rotated back maybe 45 degrees, maybe not quite. What's it going to do from there? It has to rotate forward, and it's not going to magically stop at the front. It's going to keep going. And that means that you don't have any rotational containment on your front side. So here when you go to throw, the knee rotates forward, the knee clears. So now your knee is pointing forwards 45 degrees. Note your toe didn't move. So there's 45 degrees of separation from your toe to where your knee is pointing, which means there's torque happening on your knee, which human knees are not designed for torque. That is not a good, particularly safe thing to do. And then your hip, your front hip goes even farther past that. So your front hip is, well, maybe about the same. So your knee is maybe halfway between 90 and 45, and then your hip is on 45. So your hip and your toe are pointed different directions. So if we're just talking about the line on the ground, your toe is pointed this way. Your knee is pointed on a 45. No, a half of a 45, whatever that is, math. And then your hip is pointed on a 45. So we don't want that difference to happen. We want your toe and your hip to stay pointed in the same direction. So I'll demo that real quick. Okay, so first thing, remember to turn your toe backwards 15 to 30 to 45 degrees. What that's going to do is it's going to help, eventually it's going to help with the aim issues you're having, is that this just aligns my power that way. So my power isn't straight towards the target, my power is a little bit before the target. You don't have to worry about that more than that yet. You just don't want to be at a straight 90 because that aligns your power straight towards the target, which makes the disc go right. So turn the toe back a little bit. Then in your wind up is limited to the pelvis. So the front leg is not going to move. The leg is just going to stay there. The pelvis is going to lift and drop. You're doing that part pretty much correctly. It does seem a little too rotational, which fits in with the way you throw, but that's not a real thing. That's just like my bias of how I look at motion. But anyways, you want this to rotate on your tilted axis. You don't want the knee to move. So when the knee moves, I have to move the knee forward and then I have too much spin out. So toe back, isolate the wind up to the hip so that the leg can stay here. So at my follow through position, which this drill is fake and there is not really a follow through because this leg is arbitrarily staying locked into this position. I want my follow to be here. So there is some follow in the arm, but my hip doesn't move past this point. My hip is pointing pretty much straight forward. And when I go to do the drill, it's going to wiggle because I'm a human, not a robot, but it's not going to go boom and finish 45 degrees forward. That's over rotation, and that is the spin out problem that you have and the hip escape problem that you have. So this drill is just a calibration to show your body that it can have some power and some rotation from the hip socket up without spinning past that brace. So you're just recalibrating everything and finding, okay, what amount of power can I have without moving this? And how can I put power on top of this structure without messing this structure up? So you're learning how to throw in isolation without your front leg being involved, essentially. Yeah, that's a pretty good summary of it. So let's pop back to you and check out the other video. Okay, so here's this one, and this is basically just a check-in on what we've managed to change, which is not really a whole lot yet. So there's the whole thing. I'll walk you through it. Very long hopping X step, not helping. That airborne X sets you up to spend too much time on your rear leg, which then creates a host of other problems. So the X step is too long. You load that rear leg too deeply for the rest of what's going on. You spend too much time drifting forward on that leg. That rear leg then is straight and is kind of driving off the ground a little bit too much. And then you're kind of locked into the way that you're going to move and you can't really change anything from that point. So like brace motion looks pretty good, and then you see that kind of too aggressive clearing of the front side again. So it makes sense that we haven't really made any changes in that yet because we haven't nailed the one leg drill to where you can feel a different way to throw yet. Okay, so I'm going to pause there. I'm going to go look at your other post and we'll go through that too. Okay, so here's the next post. Hi all, me again. I just started doing the one leg drill along with other drills, but mostly the one leg. And whoa, it's really impacted my game. Sadly, not in a good way. I've lost a ton of distance and I have absolutely no idea where the disc is going when I release it. So why that happens is because there's no linear momentum going into your throw, which is a decent part of how you aimed and how you calibrated the mechanism. So with that momentum gone, your throw is only rotational and there's more spray. There's, less consistency because your hit point isn't defined yet, because almost no one's hit point is defined. and the disc just comes out when it comes out based on micro variances of how you powered the drill that time. So the momentum is, think about it like a crutch or think about it like a benefit, that keeps the disc going in a line and kind of reins in the rotational part of your throw and makes the disc go the right direction. So that's why that's happening. That's just growing pains. Like you're removing the momentum, and then when you find how to aim better, how to get a defined hit point and a defined release, then accuracy will kind of open up to you. So you're removing the crutch of momentum to keep the disc moving in a linear direction in order to challenge yourself and develop that hit point more, which we haven't even talked about hit point at all yet. We're just trying to mess with your brace, but that's kind of the second thing that we would do in this drill. Okay, so you've done the sweeper drill. Excellent. I think that's a gorgeous drill, but the same idea is baked into my one leg stuff. I'm just leaving that leg behind you. Overthrow, stand with your back to the target and throw drill. That's also pretty good. I think that goes a long way to getting the hit point timing and mechanics to kind of make sense to your brain. So I think that's awesome. And again, the Beto drill, not a huge fan. That's gonna confuse the issue because the Beto drill is like the last 10% of power that happens while the disc is on its way out. And that's totally different from everything else that's going on. So I think you have a little bit of like information overload here because you're doing my one leg stuff and Yanni's rear leg stuff, which goes really well together. Josh's stand with your back to the target and throw behind you thing, that's great for hit point, but kind of unrelated to bracing. And then the Beto drill is like completely not related. So I would kind of like do Josh's thing. That's great. Do that as an experiment to feel that feeling. But then I would focus on the one leg stuff, and the sweeper drill is fine to mix in there. But like one thing at a time, kind of, because you're just doing a lot. And then you say, it takes forever to implement form changes. Yes. But your swing doesn't feel like it's going in the right direction. Okay, that's awesome. That's great to address. It's really good to be aware of that. So it's good that you notice that something is not how you want it, and then we just refocus and get back on track, and then hopefully we'll make some progress. Okay, so then more videos. Here's another one leg. This looks a little better, but the knee still moves back and forward. It's just not as much. Slow you down. So here the knee is pointed with the toe. Oops, what did I do? Broke it. So that's Zuckerberg has a problem with his code here because now none of the controls work. Like, that's cool. Okay. So now I'm looking at a picture of a video player and the X doesn't even work. Awesome. Okay. Try again. See if it's a video now. Now it's a video. Okay. Also, the rear leg bend is not something I'm a huge fan of. And then there, see how the rear leg is drifting towards the camera? I mean, part of that's just rollover, that's fine. But your hips move too far forward. Like, you can't see it as well here as the other video, but if you were holding a stick on the outside of your right hip, it would not be pointed in the same direction as your toes anymore. It would be pointed slightly forward. But on the whole, this is better, so it is moving in the right direction. Understand it may not feel like that, though. So let's as far as practical advice, let's absolutely remove the bend in the knee, because the bend in the front knee, the bend in the knee allows the knee to twist. It's a lot harder to twist that leg if you keep your knee locked out. So just keep your knee locked out, and then you won't get that motion in the front leg. Because what we're trying to do is eliminate any motion in the front leg. So that's that one. Does this get me to the next one? Yeah, cool. So really, really pretty the same. Maybe a little bit more dialed in. Looks like the X step is maybe more controlled here. I mean, it's still a hop, but it doesn't look quite as long. So then another thing, just the way you're queuing up your off arm, that off arm is going to punch around your belt line, which is just going to make you spin more, which is what it does. So we could change your off arm. Yeah, let's look at that in the context of the one leg drill. That might be helpful. So again, kind of too much time on the rear leg here, and it gets too straight, and then it's stuck behind you south on the T-pad pointed towards the camera instead of being able to go east, which is towards your heel side. You do have a nice little swoop, but it's too far forward. I mean, swoop in your foot, not in your elbow. Okay, so let me flip you around. What are we talking about? We're talking about, well, I would say shorter X step, but I just don't even do a walk up for now. I mean, if you want to play rounds, whatever. But the big thing we're trying to change, I guess, is the off arm. I think not because the off arm like matters a whole bunch, but that'll kind of change the way you're thinking about your brace. So your off arm cues up behind you on a 45, and then it's going to orbit around your belt line and punch forward, almost like a double move kind of thing. So that is not going to help the motion that we're trying to get. So too big of a next step, which means you load this leg too much and you spend too much time here and you drift off of that too much, and then it's stuck behind you and it has to rotate in place and do a scoop. What we prefer, if we were doing a walk up, is a short X step and then getting to the brace quicker so that this leg is not so far strung out that way, and it can just go boom and get into the position that it's in our one leg throw. So that's why we're getting used to throwing from that position, is so that the leg can sweeper drill into that spot. So that's that. Off arm, your off arm cues up here. What that is going to do is punch through and make me spin too far. That's all it can do. So this is a not go arm zone. Don't put your arm there. Have your arm go, so we'll do this in the context of a one leg drill. Have your arm go swing in on a 45 behind you, and it's coming up. So that then the kind of the first thing that happens in your forward movement is you're going to shoot the arm down towards your brace. You're saying, I want all the weight to go there. And it's going to help weight, and it's going to help make your brace vertical. So you're putting force into the ground. Your brace currently is hopping up out of the ground. So instead you want energy to go down into the ground so that you can push against it and have your hips snap more. So how we're going to get there is you can swing your arms like this. So they're swinging on 90-degree angles to each other. One arm is going this way, and the other arm is going flat to the camera. So you turn that, and it looks like this. It's not this. They're not going in front of me. They're going on 45s. So all I'm going to do here is I'm going to pick up my back one and drop it in a slightly different timing. So my front arm is doing nothing different. My back arm goes boom. And my front arm just does that on its own because I'm changing the impulse here to make that go more. So that's downward force causing rotational acceleration. So again, in real time, swinging, dropping, and flinging. So that is the easiest way I have to get you to actually feel how the off arm affects the timing and how the down makes more rotation. And then you're going to do that in a one leg drill. So you're just going to be here and you're going to go boom. So a really good demo for this is if I fan in a one leg drill kind of hard, watch what happens, like kind of too hard for my brace. Note 45 degrees of spin out. Now with the same power level, if I exaggerate dropping my arm, I don't spin out because I made more ground force to push against to fight the over rotation. So that can be a way to key in to the parts of the motion that we want and you're just adding weight and intention to the brace by putting more force there. So that can be a good way, like it's kind of what happens before what happens, to use the most confusing phrase possible. Because what happens in your current throw is you go boom and you wind up this way. The only thing you can do from there is spin through. So just cut it off at that point and just say, okay, I'm not going to punch around my waistline. I'm going to punch down to my foot. And that can be the change before anything important happens that leads you towards finding the right movement. So that's kind of what I would suggest as a way to key in to getting this front leg to stop rotating so much. So that's a really good one. Another really good one is just go back to the beginning of the one leg drill, which means not throwing, because that's when you tend to get goal oriented and say, oh, I've lost 100 feet of distance. Like, I need to throw harder to get that back. No, you don't. Keep throwing, like rein in your distance. So say if you were throwing 300, say, okay, I'm only going to throw 150 because I don't care how far the disc is going. I care how my body is moving to get it there. When you can actually detach from striving to throw a certain distance or certain accuracy, that's when you can start to do work, productive work, and you really can't before then. It's almost impossible for a human brain to learn at full speed, at full power, which is where you're going to be if you're trying to throw far. So let go of all expectations, just make it like playful, fun experimentation, and don't worry about distance and accuracy. Worry about how the throw feels and how the throw looks on camera, because cameras don't lie. So go back to the beginning of the drill, turn the leg back, keep the knee locked. Absolutely keep the knee here. So you can do the same with your rear. Like when your rear knee is a little bit bent, then it's easier to bend your front knee, and then it's too easy to over rotate backwards. So as a rule, keep your spine long and extended, keep your rear leg long and extended, and keep your standing leg long and extended. So this is your frame. Lift the rear hip, drop the rear hip. So there's no knee bend and no knee turn in that. You're just going here, boom. Get that to make sense, and get to where you are aware of the tendency to over rotate your knee and fight it. So I've had some people that I've worked with that have to think about rotating the knee forward to counteract the tendency to rotate backwards, and that's fine to play with, just don't do it full power. But you can do whatever you need to do, film it to where you can isolate the rotation and not have the knee move backwards too much. Then you can get this and this to organize on top of that to where the hip doesn't have to spin forward too much and cause a torque situation in the knee. So that's where I would start with. And I understand it's frustrating, but this is the normal growth process going through this drill, is that like people don't get it right at first. You have to do it wrong to see and understand the things that you're doing in your throw that are not productive. So hopefully we're there now, and that all makes sense. Please ask questions if any of it is not clear. But now that you have that, you can go back to the beginning of the drill with more understanding of what we're trying to get out of it, and try it again and see if we can get more of that stuff to lock in. And then from there, once we get some front side containment where you're not rotating too far, then that'll give us enough of a bounded framework where we can start to look at your hit point. And that's when the accuracy will start to get a little bit better. And also that's where the power increase comes from, because you can't get a hit point, you can't crack the whip when you're spinning out. When you're spinning forward, there's not enough time, there's no compression from the ground causing the whip to crack. It's just a baseball bat spinning forward, and there's no release point. So once you get some containment in the leg, you can work on dialing in the hit point to where the leg actually starts the kinematic sequence working right. So your hips have to go and then start slowing down in order for your shoulders to go faster, in order for your elbow to go faster, in order for your hand to go faster, in order for the disc to go faster. So you have to have that stop point, or that start slowing down point, built in before any of the rest of it can make sense. So that's what we're focusing on, is that first lower level right now. So hopefully that makes sense. Again, ask questions. Good work so far. I know it's frustrating. Hang in there. We'll make some progress. See you next time.